Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 27th of May, 2021. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So, some big news, I guess, over the last 24 hours with regards to the crypto markets, where Icahn, I think that's how you say his last name here, has mentioned that he wants to get up to $1.5 billion in crypto exposure, and he prefers Ethereum. Now, for those of you who don't know who Carl is, he's a billionaire fund manager, essentially, over a massive conglomerate. I think he's pretty much considered a legendary investor, one of those ones you hear about, like Ray Dalio and all that sort of stuff there. But so, this is, I guess, just another person in a long line of, I guess you could say, money managers, fund managers, billionaires like that, like Dalio, Druckenmiller, and Munger. And stuff like that. But Munger's actually bearish on crypto here, but he's still listed there as someone who's opined on it. But Carl seems very bullish, and this is a quote directly from, I guess, like the video, where he said, "With Ethereum, it's the underlying blockchain. So Ethereum has two things: you can use it as a payment system, and you can use it as a store of value." And then he says, "So Ethereum and Bitcoin are different. Bitcoin to me is just a store of value." So he thinks that Ethereum or Ether is also a store of value here, which I think is really cool to see. Just like someone outside of the ecosystem saying. I mean, we've all been saying it. A lot of us think that ETH's going to flip Bitcoin, but it's always good to see that people outside of the ecosystem, such as Carl and just traditional finance people, kind of favor Ethereum over Bitcoin, because at the end of the day, I've said it a million times, and you all know this, but Ethereum can do a lot more than Bitcoin. It's a lot more versatile. It appeals to many more people. So that's why I think we're seeing kind of like these kind of like, I guess, maybe you can call them smarter or more kind of like intelligent fund managers kind of preferring Ethereum over Bitcoin. I think generally, as I've said before, Ethereum has a much larger total addressable market than Bitcoin. It is much easier for these finance types to get their head around, I think. I think with Bitcoin, they can say, you can basically say, okay, well, if you buy into the narrative that Bitcoin's digital gold, then that's fine. You can understand that. But if you want to stop at digital gold, that's up to you. But if you want to go further than that, if you want to see how this technology can be, can do more for like the existing financial system and things like that, and kind of like make a better financial system, and how the asset that powers that kind of like new financial system can accrue this value, then you look at Ethereum and you look at ETH. There's really no other alternative here. So really cool to see that. And this was on Bloomberg as well. So obviously a very popular kind of a program here that runs all the time. And this was covered. I think this was covered by a lot of different media. I mean, ZeroHedge is pretty big as well. I know ZeroHedge gets a lot of flack for different things, but they have a very large reach. Last time I checked. And then, Saylor actually retweeted the video here. Michael Saylor, who has got a massive following as well. Obviously, he's Bitcoin only right now. But I actually think even people like Michael Saylor are going to come around eventually and buy ETH as well. But yeah, it'll be cool to watch that. But just really cool to see more validation of Ethereum and ETH outside of the crypto ecosystem as well. So Taylor Monahan put together a thread on 1559 today that I thought... If I'm being honest, I don't think this thread was done in good faith. I don't think Taylor has done enough research to be putting this thread together. And basically, I'm not going to read through the whole thread. You can check this out in the YouTube description. But what this thread boils down to is that she's saying 1559 does not deliver because she thinks that people have been promising that 1559 was going to lower gas fees. Now, if you've been watching The Refuel for quite a while and reading my newsletters and, just seeing me on Twitter, I have never said that 1559 would lower the gas fees personally. And a lot of people that I know and I'm good friends with have never said this. We've all tried to push back on this because there are some people saying this. But those people, from what I've seen, are just either random people on Twitter who don't, are either misinformed or they don't really care to be informed. Or there's maybe in the past, there's been a couple of people in the Ethereum ecosystem that have said this, but from what I can tell, like hardly anyone has been saying this. So, obviously Taylor here is starting from the premise that 1559 does not deliver because of this. And then throughout the thread, she seems to reason her way to this premise. She seems to kind of like try and even convince herself of this. And I didn't buy into this thread at all. And she received a bunch of responses, a bunch of different tweets from different people here. You can see in the threads. She received a response from Georgios, which is one of the people that have been doing deep research on this along with Hazu. You can go to his profile on Twitter and kind of see his response here, or you can just head into the quote tweets. It'll be there as well to see it. But just generally, I want to get something straight about 1559. So There was also another claim that Taylor made here, or at least alluded to, was that she thinks 1559 was pushed through because it's just really good for number go up, right? And I really hate this argument. I really hate this kind of line of debate here because it immediately says that just because something makes the value of ETH go up or has the potential to means it's bad. I think that is a really, really poor framing, and I think that the ETH going up in value is very healthy in general, not just because people make money, but it's just healthy for the entire ecosystem. And I've gone through for the reasons why before in both my newsletter on the Refuel, so I won't kind of like rehash that here, but that's kind of like the premise that I think she starts from. I think she just thinks that 1559 was created to pump ETH, right? If I'm just putting it bluntly, and I think that she thinks that people were selling it as a way to reduce gas fees, just as a way to kind of push 1559 in to do that fee burning. I think this couldn't be further from the truth. I think that what she's getting, I mean, even if this is an honest faith argument here, what she's getting mixed up with is that 1559 does not and will not lower fees in any material way. It was not designed to do that. What 1559 does, though, is greatly improve the user experience when it comes to fees. And I've gone through this before, but essentially the biggest user experience boost that 1559 will bring will be the fact that you will no longer have to, in at least 99% of cases, you will no longer have to speed up your transaction anymore. If you kind of like put a transaction through and you're paying what's called the base fee, which will be automatically calculated by your wallets, once that happens, you are guaranteed pretty much almost all the time to get into the next block because of that. Unless it's, periods of really, really high congestion, like we saw the other day when gas spiked up to 2,000 Gwei, the kind of mechanism flips back to what's called a tip. So the tip will actually be paid on top of that if you want to get like a priority transaction in. But under normal circumstances, under normal operation of the Ethereum network, like it is right now, where gas fees are down to about 30 Gwei right now for rapid transactions, you would be paying that and getting your transaction in the next block. You would not have to be, there wouldn't be this very variable kind of like fees going on where you pay 30 and then it spikes up to 40 and then you have to wait a few blocks, and then, sometimes it might even just stay at 40 and you end up having to wait like much longer than you thought you would. With 1559, that problem pretty much goes away, which is obviously a massive kind of user experience boost here, because think about how many people, especially newer people, are doing transactions and then they get stuck and they try to unstick a transaction, and MetaMask only allows you to do this once, where you click speed up transaction. You can't do this a second time, which I don't know why they don't allow you to do this again. But essentially, to do it again, you have to basically be an advanced user where you have to go into MetaMask, change the nonce manually to replace that sped up transaction again in order to get your kind of transaction through. And you have to do all this fancy stuff that newer people won't know how to do and kind of like shouldn't be expected to do. So from that point of view, 1559 is great. And there's a bunch of other reasons why it's great. I mean, it helps somewhat with MEV as well, but it also makes it so that with MEV, it becomes less toxic, because that MEV kind of like revenue, that the kind of fees being paid, will actually go to burning ETH. Because if you think about it right now, and I've explained this before, how with flash bots right now, the fees aren't actually being paid on the Ethereum kind of public mempool. They're being paid as bribes to miners essentially. But with 1559, those miners will still have to pay ETH to the network and still have to burn ETH as part of that base fee, even if they're going through flashbots, going through a dark pool instead of like the public mempool. So that's really cool. It also gives a better gas estimation, as I explained, which means it's really easy for smart contracts developers and especially layer 2s to kind of like time their transactions a lot better and be able to know, when they're going to get their transactions in and things like that. And, that is obviously a huge boost to them too. So, and then obviously the fee burning is great, but that is not the main point of this. And it has never been the main point of this. 1559 was introduced as a user experience boost here. And you can go back and read early posts from Eric Connor, one of the co-authors, and kind of like early thinking around 1559 from Vitalik, like all the way back in, I think 2016, he started writing about changing the kind of like gas fee mechanism on Ethereum. So, yeah, I don't know. I didn't think this thread was done in good faith. It felt like a bit of a rant to me. It felt like, Taylor was just upset because people were selling this as something that would just pump ETH, which, yes, of course, a lot of the focus has been on 1559 burning ETH. But I think that's just because, if we're being honest with ourselves, like, let's just stop lying here. Most people are in this ecosystem to make money at the end of the day, right? And even if they're in this ecosystem to make money, they can still want to make money, but also care about the technology. You can care about both things. But it's just much easier to say things like, well, 1559 is going to burn ETH. Let's talk about that as the talking point, than it is to try and explain to people why it's a massive user experience boost. Because most people don't even care about that. Like, it's just the reality of it. Really, I mean, you're kidding yourself if you think that most people are in this ecosystem for more than money. I mean, I've had to come to terms with that over the years and realize that, yeah, okay, people are in this to make money, and that's fine. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm saying that people who think that there's a lot of people in this ecosystem just for the tech, and they think that they should be 100% focused on tech, that's just not the reality of the situation. And you always have to stick with the reality. You can't just make up your own kind of like echo chamber or your own kind of reality and say, okay, well, this is how I think reality should be, so this is what I'm going to argue against. It doesn't make much sense to me. So hopefully that clears up a bit about 1559 and how, in my view at least, it has never been sold as a solution to the fee problem. The only way we're going to materially reduce fees for end users is by scaling at layer 2. As I've said many, many times in the past, layer 1 is always going to be expensive. It's not going to be cheap because it's just the way it is. Because the cheaper kind of like use cases get priced out by the more expensive ones, because the more expensive ones are more profitable. Think about the arbitrage transactions that take up a lot of the gas fees. They are profitable for people who do this, but most users do not do arbitrage transactions. Most users do not do MEV. Most users do not do liquidations and things like that. So those kind of transactions will always take up the majority, which means that if we want to keep Ethereum decentralized and secure, we need to move to layer 2, and that's going to happen. That's happening very, very, very soon. And I mean, I've got a few things about layer 2 to talk about in a sec, but this is all happening much quicker than people think it is. And I think that focusing on 1559 and bashing it because you think that it was sold as a way to reduce fees is the wrong way to go about it. Because in my view, it was never, ever done like that. It never even started like that. But anyway, I'll leave it at that for now. Definitely go, read this thread for yourself, see what you think. But I hope that answers your, people's questions around this. Because I got pinged a fair few times. I didn't want to put together a thread or anything like that because, whenever I do threads these days, I always get like tons of people replying to it, and it forks off, and I try to reply to everyone, and then I get lost in it. So I figured I'll just do it on the refuel where, the people who actually care for an answer will be. So hopefully that answers, everyone that was kind of like bugging me to answer this today. And speaking of 1559, if you are, interested in kind of like diving deeper into it and diving deeper into how it's going to work with different kind of wallets and the technical details of it, there's a cheat sheet that Trent Van Epps and Tim Biko have made here that basically explains it all. They explain exactly how it's going to work down to the technical details, and there's a lot in here. And I mean, obviously you don't have to read this if you're not very technical, but it basically explains how it all works, how it's expected to work in different wallets, how different wallets can kind of integrate this, and how the legacy transactions will also work, and how the activation process is going to work within London as well. So definitely go check this one out. So speaking of scalability solutions, Polygon announced yesterday that they have released their SDK or software development kit, the official Polygon SDK here, which is a very important milestone to Polygon becoming more than just the Polygon POS chain and the Matic Plasma chain. As I've discussed before, Polygon is a suite of scalability solutions. They want to do everything from standalone chains to layer 2 chains. And you can see here that basically what they're going for with this release, where is it? Down here. This is a public beta release, and this supports initial set of modules with standalone chains being the only one right now, and those standalone chains are like the Polygon POS chain, but in the future they will be supporting layer 2s, of course, so all your favorite rollups and things like that, more consensus algorithms, so not just proof of stake, but I'm sure they'll be able to do proof of work and the different flavors of proof of stake and any of the other ones that people can come up with. There's going to be interchain and bridging modules as well, so better bridges. Obviously the bridge has been a big point of contention for Polygon, because of the fact that they've got a multi-sig on their bridge, a plugin system for developers to plug into, and an enterprise modules as well. So this is really, really cool. This is obviously built for developers. It's not built for regular users. But the fact of the matter is the developers are the ones who build the apps for the regular users, right? So this is the tools that they need to do that and to keep doing that. And I'm really, really happy to see Polygon kind of leading the charge here, because I really do think that people think that Polygon is literally just the POS chain, and that's it. Where it's going to be a suite of scalability solutions. And if and as I said before, I've been personally, pushing the Polygon team, saying, when rollups are out there and they're ready and they've been battle tested, I would love to see the Polygon POS chain transition to a rollup solution. Still using the, I guess, staking that they have today and the validators that they have today, but instead of it being secured by, I guess, like its own consensus mechanism, and by those validators, it basically just becomes secured by Ethereum. And it's not that, I'm not sure on the technical details of how this swapping out would work. I'm pretty sure it is definitely possible. But if it leads to too much disruption, it might not be possible, but I don't think so. And in saying that, like the way the Polygon POS chain exists today, it already kind of relies on Ethereum for a lot of its functionality. As I've discussed before, the staking logic lives on Ethereum, the slashing logic, it commits itself to Ethereum and stuff like that. So essentially, changing to a rollup would mean that instead of the security being reliant on the validators and reliant on the bridge, it would just simply be reliant on the Ethereum L1 kind of like system there. And obviously that would make everyone really happy. So I'm looking forward to that. But I think that this SDK just generally allows people to build their own app chains and things like that, and their own standalone chains and their own L2s or whatever, while tapping into Polygon's kind of entire ecosystem here, which is obviously very friendly with Ethereum. So the way I view kind of like Polygon and like the Polygon ecosystem in general is more like a Polkadot killer, right? Like, those interoperability chains who are trying to do this, like Polkadot and Cosmos. I view Polygon as that. And that's kind of like another reason why I'm supporting it, is because, if you want to have like this app chain ecosystem, then you should definitely have it be obviously Ethereum aligned, but also be secured by Ethereum eventually as well. So really, really cool to see this. If you're a developer listening in here, I highly recommend going and checking out the SDK. It'll be linked in the YouTube description as usual. So speaking of scaling solutions here, Hayden Adams tweeted out today that the Uniswap community has kind of like put together a snapshot vote, basically saying they want Uniswap v3 to be deployed to Arbitrum, which obviously I've been talking about a lot lately. I think, what is it, 1 day now? Yeah, about 1 day until they go live with their developer mainnet. And there was a massive vote here with over 40 million Uni tokens put towards this vote. And I actually discussed this yesterday, that there was a proposal to do this, and I was saying how hard it is to actually get the votes necessary. But people came together and did it. I think this was spearheaded by DC Investor and a few other people on here. But that was really cool to see. And the coolest bit is that Hayden actually tweeted out and said, assuming that this snapshot vote passes, they intend to support they being the Uniswap team, intend to support the community by deploying the V3 smart contracts to Arbitrum, and they have already begun work on interface support and planning the deployment. This is really, really cool because, as a lot of you will know, Uniswap announced a long time ago that they would be deploying to Optimism. Now, people thought, oh, okay, does this mean that Uniswap is only going to deploy to Optimism? Are they only Optimism maximalists, right? Are they going to deploy to any of the other scalability solutions? And it turns out they are. They are deploying to Arbitrum. I would love to see them even deploy to everything else, right? Like, I would love to see them on Polygon. Really would. But like, it's good that they're not just sticking with Optimism here and going with Arbitrum as well, because it signals that they're not being, layer 2 maximalists. And I actually kind of wrote about this in my newsletter today, where I said that the Ethereum community is very good at rejecting maximalism, even though people will say ETH maxis or whatever to people who are very involved with Ethereum, and I'm called that as well. I don't think that's true. I think that's just people kind of like using an easy label to kind of like discredit someone. But I think in general, the Ethereum community just rejects maximalism in general. It wants to be open to as many people as possible. And actually, this is going to lead me into something I want to talk about, a tweet from Martin here. But essentially, Ethereum lends itself to basically being open to as many people as possible and to the world in general, and to not kind of like rejecting all these kind of things from all these different people, because they think that the sum of parts is greater than the whole, so to speak. Whereas obviously Bitcoiners think that Bitcoin maximalists think that Bitcoin should just be the only one chain that exists. Bitcoin should just be the thing that everyone builds on. I don't think that that is true at all, obviously, and I don't think any of the Ethereans think it's true. And I don't think Ethereans think that Ethereum should be the only one holy system. I think what Ethereans believe is that blockchain should be programmable, but they should also be as decentralized as possible. And that's why you see a lot of Ethereans, and maybe you want to call them ETH maxis, kind of fighting against these other chains. Like, like all these alternative layer 1 chains, because pretty much all of them sacrifice decentralization to achieve some semblance of scale. But yeah, they're just centralized at the end of the day. And, their culture, their values centers around that and does not really lend itself to what the Ethereum community wants to see. Whereas, these layer 2 solutions and even, things like Polygon and stuff do. And that's why I think that Hayden is embracing things like Arbitrum instead of just being a maximalist for optimism. But as he says in his third tweet here, he says that the team remains excited for optimism and will continue their work there as well. And then in his fourth tweet, he says layer 2 solutions will unlock enormous UX benefits with fast finality and low transaction fees. But he also cautions the community to take things slowly. This is all still experimental technology and needs battle testing before it can achieve the economic activity of layer 1. And I agree with him here. As much as I hype layer 2s up, pretty much all of them haven't received as much battle testing as they should yet, and obviously we haven't had Arbitrum or Optimism go live yet, so it remains to be seen how they fare there. But still, very, very, very cool here, and I think that it's really cool that Hayden isn't a maximalist and is like an Optimism maximalist, and the Uniswap team aren't as well, and are open to deploying things if the community wants them, which is really, really cool to see. And speaking of Arbitrum, they announced yesterday that they have partnered with Alchemy platform here to give Arbitrum developers access to the Alchemy developer platform. Now, for those who don't know, Alchemy is essentially, there are a whole bunch of things, but like their core product, I think it's probably still their core product, is basically what Infura gives you, which is essentially like node infrastructure to run your different deployments on and to basically tap into to kind of like be able to service different users. So it's really good to see that they're supporting Arbitrum's layer 2 network here. I think this is kind of like similar to how I was talking about the infrastructure from block explorers as well, needing to be ready. I think Arbitrum, I'm just going to assume that Arbitrum is going to hopefully have an Etherscan implementation just like Optimism does, because Arbitrum's current block explorer definitely leaves much to be desired. I think it's been very frustrating. I spoke to Mariano Conti, who's been playing with Arbitrum lately, and he said the entire kind of like a thing is really, really awesome. Like the entire developer experience is awesome. The only thing that's letting it down is the block explorer right now. So I'm just assuming that they're going to have an Etherscan like block explorer experience up, hoping that sooner rather than later, but we'll see how that goes there. So Alchemist Coin, which is a project here building a bunch of different tools, they released what's called MistX, which is the world's first Flash DEX powered by Flashbots. So essentially, I guess what this does is, if I open up the blog post here, it essentially makes it so that Flashbots is available to everyone to use for front-running protection, and the no success, no fee transactions are the thing of the past here. So they say there is no concept of reverts on MistX. Your transactions will either be successful with no front-running, or you pay nothing, which is really, really cool here. So this is cool because I think the team that's working on kind of like part of the Alchemist ecosystem is also working as part of Flashbots here, so they understand this intimately. They understand what makes it work and what, kind of like how it's being used and things like that. And then basically this gives you gasless swaps as well, because it's going through Flashbots. You can basically not have to pay Ethereum gas fees, but definitely you'll be I think you're still paying other fees as well. As I say here, this does not mean MistX is entirely feeless. Rather, the fees are reduced and taken into consideration as a portion of the value within the cryptocurrencies being traded within Ethereum, ETH to token or token to ETH and things like that. They give a few examples here. I highly suggest going and reading this blog post. It's pretty detailed. Flashbots is obviously, Flashbots and MEV is obviously a really hot topic lately. I'm sure a lot of you would have listened to the Bankless podcast the other day with a bunch of people talking about this sort of stuff as well. But I think it's worth paying attention to these tools that are coming out. Like there's another one called Cow Swap, which allows you to kind of avoid front running and avoid sandwich attacks as well. But MistX is another one and taking a different approach here. So definitely go check this out if you haven't already. So a really, really good tweet from Martin Köppelman here from Gnosis, where he was basically quote tweeting Pomp here, who said, "Bitcoiners versus the world." And then Martin says, "Ethereum for the world," which I think just really encapsulates, I guess, like the difference in cultures here. Because really, when you think about it, Bitcoiners are fighting the world. Like a lot of them think that they need to be very defensive because the world is their enemy, and they should basically fight everyone who doesn't believe in Bitcoin and who doesn't kind of think that Bitcoin is anything special, and they kind of view those people as enemies. Whereas Ethereum and the Ethereum culture is more about building things for the entire world to enjoy and not viewing the world as an enemy, but viewing the world as something that can be improved. So take DeFi, for example. The DeFi builders and entire ecosystem, they believe that finance can be greatly improved. I don't think that we believe that banks and centralized finance is the enemies. All that they're doing is that they're just a symptom of a wider problem, and that being centralization in the financial system. I don't think there's many people out there who prefer centralization in the system, and I think those that do, I wouldn't even call them the enemy. I would call them just like a barrier that needs to be broken down. So yeah, within DeFi on Ethereum, what we're trying to do is just basically make it so that everyone can have access to these financial services, non-custodially in a decentralized fashion. And then on top of that, you've got other things happening on Ethereum, right? With NFTs, we think that there should be kind of like everything should be tokenized, and people should be able to enjoy their kind of collectibles in any which way they want. Then there's DAOs, of course. We believe that organizations should be global, should be worldwide. Organizations should be done differently and more efficiently using DAOs instead of using these kind of like, I guess, existing traditional centralized systems. That I definitely think is more of a fight than maybe DeFi is, because I think power structures of hierarchies and kind of like different governments and nation states are much harder to tear down than something like a existing financial system is. Because as I've said before on the Refuel, I think that centralized companies are going to tap into the decentralized finance rails and offer these to their customers and their clients. I think that's actually fine. And obviously there's going to be regulations at some point, but I think that trying to regulate DeFi is going to be very hard. It's going to be like trying to regulate the internet. You can to some extent, but there are still ways around every ban that you put in place, because it's an open and kind of like decentralized platform to an extent. The internet itself, maybe not like in terms of like the apps centralizing power, but if you think about it, the reason why no government or nation state has ever been able to shut down peer-to-peer file sharing is because it is impossible. You can do things like DNS blocks, you can block websites, you can do all sorts of stuff like that, but you can't stop people from sharing things around the world, because at the end of the day, they're sharing it on some neutral infrastructure that doesn't favor any one person. Now, in saying that, China has their great firewall, that they've got set up where they monitor everything and they block certain things they don't like. But you can still get around that because there's VPNs and stuff like that. And there's still ways to kind of get around that. But at the same time, if you try to do that in, the kind of like I guess like Western world, especially in the US, there's always a lot of pushback on that. Like I remember net neutrality on the internet was a thing where they were trying to kind of repeal that, but there's a lot of pushback, and given that obviously the US is a democracy, it just didn't go through because it had to be voted on by a bunch of different people within Congress and things like that. I won't get into the politics there, but that's really what we're kind of like doing here with Ethereum. We're not trying to fight the world. We're not trying to kind of like view the world as our enemy. We're trying to improve the world as much as possible with the tools that we have available to us today and the tools that we're going to build in the future. So yeah, just something to keep in mind there of, I guess, like how I and a lot of Ethereans like me view Ethereum. And Bitcoin is definitely have a more adversarial mindset here, which I don't know if it's a good or bad thing. I just think it's very different, and I just think it's not something that I think that I would kind of like subscribe to. So there is now over 5 million ETH in the ETH2 deposit contract here, which is really, really cool to see. Now, the reason why I brought this up today is because I've actually been monitoring DeFi Pulse lately and seeing that ETH in DeFi has been going down over the past, I guess, like month or so. And the thing is, this doesn't track ETH2. This only tracks things like Lido Finance, and I think some of the kind of like tokenized ETH2. But most of the ETH in ETH2 is not tracked by DeFi Pulse. So you can see here that ETH locked peaked at about 11 million. Now we're down to 9.4 million. So we've lost about 1.6 million here. But at the same time, we've had a lot of ETH go into ETH2. So, I assume some of this ETH is going into ETH2. I assume some of it kind of was taken out because obviously the price went down as well. So people kind of closed their leverage out. And, they kind of like withdrew the collateral from these platforms, and maybe they just went to cold storage, or maybe they just went to ETH2. The reason why I think they went to ETH2 is because a lot of the stablecoin yields right now have actually come down a lot because of the leverage in the system going down. Like, the only reason you have high stablecoin yields is because there's demand to borrow stablecoins, which obviously comes from people wanting to leverage up. So once that demand starts going down, the yields start going down, and then people don't want to kind of borrow stablecoins anymore. And if they were using kind of like ETH to as collateral to borrow those stable coins, well, that's kind of what happens there. So I think a lot of ETH has gone into ETH2 here, and I think it's 5.1 million ETH right now. And, the funny thing is, actually, anecdotally, I have experience with myself, because I was like using my ETH to kind of like borrow stablecoins and farm with them. But then as the stablecoin yields fell, I was like, well, is it even worth it anymore? Should I just send my ETH, some more of my ETH into ETH2 and kind of get that 7% APY right now and just stack ETH with it, right? Instead of like kind of yield farming with all of it. And that's what I've done. I've taken some more ETH out of it, and I'm going to spin up some more validators on ETH2. And then I will keep a stablecoin farm going for a little bit as well. And I do have some other farms that I'm doing, but I think that ETH2 staking is just very attractive right now in general, and it's going to be even more attractive once the merge happens, because those fees that aren't being burned will be going to stakers as well. So the APY is going to spike up there. But I think even if it settles at around 5%, I mean, I'm very happy to get 5% on my ETH a year, because I do believe it's just going to keep going up over the long term. So why not just keep stacking ETH, right? And obviously, you have to pay taxes on all this sort of stuff because it's classed as income. But other than that, like, I just want to keep stacking the ETH, after taxes, and just keep restaking it as I go as well. So yeah, looking forward to doing that. But yeah, just some thoughts around, I guess, like ETH in the ETH2 deposit contract and ETH locked in DeFi going down here as well. And I think, you can see like where it's come out of. Like, it seems Aave has lost about 14% of ETH in the last 24 hours. But yeah, they peaked at 1.2 million. They're down to about 850,000 here. So about 350,000 out of Aave. And if I look at some of the other ones here, there may have been some protocols that lost a lot recently as well. Yearn Finance being a yield kind of aggregator here. Integral has lost a lot, but this is only the last 24 hours. I wonder if they're tracking kind of like Fei protocol here. I don't know, because Fei was like a big thing that had a lot of ETH in it, and over time that may have gotten withdrawn as well here. But then, yeah, anyway, I'm going to cover more of this in the Daily Gwei data pump, which I actually have a video for that due in the next few days. So that'll be on the channel, and I'll cover in depth about like the data for the whole month of May. So definitely look forward to that. But I'm going to leave you at that for today, everyone. So thank you again for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't yet. Give that video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.